You make more than your parents ever did. Better title, more degrees, harder hours. But somehow you're broker than they were at your age. You're not imagining it, and you're not bad with money. In 1983, the government changed one number. That single change has transferred more wealth from American workers than any tax in history. The Romans did this with coins. Argentina did it with statistics. Now, America does it with a formula called CPI. I'm going to show you exactly where the lie is hidden. Imagine you're a software engineer in Seattle. You make $150,000 a year, top 10% globally. On paper, you're rich. But look at your actual life. You drive a 6-year-old Honda. You rent a 2-bedroom apartment. Daycare eats 20% of your take-home. Tonight, you're calculating whether you can fly home for Christmas or put it on a credit card. Now look at your father in 1985. Mid-level manager, $40,000 a year. On paper, poor compared to you. But he owned a 4-bedroom house on a quarter-acre lot. 2 cars in the driveway. Your mom didn't have to work. Family vacation every summer. Pension waiting for him at 62. You have a higher salary. He had a higher life. I want to hear yours. Drop a comment. What could your parents afford at your age that you can't? I'm genuinely curious how widespread this pattern is. 2,000 years ago, Rome faced the same problem. The emperors needed money, soldiers to pay, infrastructure to build, bread and circuses to fund. Raising taxes would cause revolt. So starting with Nero in 64 AD, they changed the definition of money itself. The silver denarius was the dollar of the ancient world, 95% pure silver. Nero recalled the coins, melted them down, and recast them with copper mixed in. 90% silver now. The coins looked the same, weighed the same, had Caesar's face on them, but the emperor had stolen 5% from every transaction in the empire. It worked so well that every emperor after him did the same thing. By 270 AD, the denarius contained less than 5% silver, a copper slug with a silver wash. Rome debased the metal. America found a cleaner way. Let me show you how. In January 1983, the Bureau of Labor Statistics made a quiet change to the Consumer Price Index. They stopped measuring what houses actually cost. Before 1983, the CPI tracked real numbers, purchase price, mortgage interest, property taxes, the actual pain of buying a home. After 1983, they replaced it with owner's equivalent rent, a survey where the government calls homeowners and asks, if you were to rent your house to someone, how much could you get? Think about the absurdity of that. They stopped measuring what you pay. They started measuring a guess about a hypothetical transaction that never happens. And the timing? Not accidental. In 1985, federal tax brackets were indexed to CPI for the first time. Social Security was already indexed. The change landed right before the government would have to pay based on the number. While actual home prices have risen 2.5 times faster than CPI since the 1960s, the government's imaginary rent number stays smooth. If they still measured inflation the old way, the median home would cost $177,000 today. The actual price, $431,000. That gap is the theft. But that's just the first trick. There are 2 more. The Roman soldiers eventually realized they were being paid in worthless metal. They demanded higher wages. To pay them, emperors minted more bad coins. The result was hyperinflation. Wheat that cost 8 coins under Augustus cost 120,000 by the end of the 3rd century. Emperor Diocletian tried to fix it with laws instead of math. He issued the edict on maximum prices. Thousands of goods with fixed prices. Penalty for overcharging? Death. It didn't work. Merchants hid their goods. The economy collapsed. You can't legislate away economic reality. But you can hide it. Argentina proved that. In 2007, President Kirchner didn't like the inflation numbers. They were running above 20%. Problem was, the government had issued billions in inflation-indexed bonds. Higher inflation meant higher payments. So he fired Graciela Bavacqua, head of the statistics agency INDEC. Her crime wasn't incompetence, it was accuracy. She refused to fudge the numbers. Her replacement understood the assignment. Overnight, official inflation dropped to 10%. Prices in stores were skyrocketing. Government charts showed a flat line. One INDEC official admitted the strategy publicly. The goal was to shortchange international bondholders. They said the quiet part out loud. MIT's Billion Prices project tracked millions of actual online prices. Their finding? Real inflation was 3 times higher than the government claimed. In 2013, Argentina became the first country ever to be censured by the IMF for fraudulent data. In the US, we're more sophisticated. We don't fire statisticians. We create commissions. In 1996, the government had a problem. Social Security payments were getting expensive, so the Senate appointed the Boskin Commission. Their mandate was clear: find a way to lower the number. Their report concluded CPI was overstating inflation by 1.1% per year, and they calculated the savings explicitly. Correcting this bias would reduce the federal debt by $271 billion. They weren't hiding the motive. It's right there in the report. But the methods, that's where it gets dystopian. They introduced two pieces of statistical magic: substitution and hedonics. Substitution is the let them eat cake of statistics. The old CPI assumed if you bought steak in 1990, you wanted steak in 1991. Price goes up, inflation goes up. The new formula says if steak gets expensive, you'll switch to hamburger. If hamburger gets expensive, you'll eat chicken. So even as your standard of living declines, the CPI stays flat. They measure survival, not living. They call your poverty adaptation. Hedonics is worse. If a product improves, they subtract the value of that improvement from the price. Here's how the trap works. 1990 Camry cost $12,000. A 2024 Camry costs $30,000. You pay $18,000 more cash. But the statistician sees a backup camera, 17 airbags, a touchscreen. He calculates those features are worth $15,000. So officially, the car only went up $3,000. Try telling your landlord you can't make rent because your car has a really nice touchscreen. You can't pay bills with hedonic utility. You pay with cash. The government measures quality. You pay price. This is why technology keeps getting cheaper in the CPI while your life gets more expensive. You can watch Netflix in 4K resolution while you eat ramen because you can't afford meat. According to the CPI, you're doing great, but don't take my word for it. The UK ran the experiment. Britain maintained two inflation measures, RPI and CPI. Same economy, different formulas. CPI uses substitution logic. RPI doesn't. In 2011, they switched public pensions from RPI to CPI. Over 15 years, RPI measured 53.6% cumulative inflation. CPI measured 35.6%, an 18-point gap. The government's own estimate, the switch transfers £400 billion from retirees to the Treasury over 50 years. Not through taxation, through measurement. Now here's how this connects to your housing crisis. When the government suppresses official inflation, it lets the Federal Reserve keep interest rates artificially low. If inflation is officially 3%, rates can be 4%. But if inflation is actually 10%, rates should be 12%. By keeping rates low based on a fake number, they flooded the world with cheap money. That money didn't go into wages, it went into assets, stocks, real estate. It allowed private equity firms to borrow billions at near zero interest and buy up single-family homes, the homes you wanted to buy. If you owned assets before 2008, the fake inflation made you rich. If you're a worker without assets, it crushed you. Your wages are tied to the low CPI. The assets you want are priced in cheap money. This is why the wealth gap is exploding. It's not just capitalism, it's the measurement. And it gets worse at the grocery store. Real wages peaked in January 1973, 2 years after Nixon took us off gold. Once money was unmoored, inflation ran hot. To hide the heat, they broke the thermometer. The $4.03 an hour workers earned in 1973 had the same purchasing power as $23.68 today. We haven't gotten richer in 50 years. It's called shrinkflation, the corporate version of Nero's coin clipping. The cereal box used to be 16 ounces. Now it's 14. Price is the same. Box looks the same. But the silver content has been shaved. The CPI often misses it entirely. You're squeezed from both sides. The government dilutes your money by printing it. Corporations dilute your goods by shrinking them. Statisticians cover it up by changing formulas. The Romans who understood debasement converted denarii into gold and land. The Argentinians who understood indec moved savings into dollars. The British pensioners had no recourse. They were captive. You can't change the formula. You can't force the BLS back to 1980 methodology. But you can stop measuring your success against a rigged yardstick. Your parents bought a house when the median price was 3.5 times income. Today it's 6.3 times yours. They weren't smarter. They weren't more disciplined. They played before the rules changed. The guilt you feel, the late nights stressing over the budget, the feeling you're failing because you can't replicate their life, let it go. You're playing a rigged game. The first step to winning is realizing the scoreboard is broken. You just did. If this satisfies anything, hit subscribe, because the math they don't teach is the math that's stealing from you. Calculate accordingly.